I have to say, I was expecting a lot more from Kid Icarus. I've heard some people say that this is one of Nintendo's underrated masterpieces. I've heard other people say that this is one of the weakest first-party Nintendo games. I think it's kind of in the middle, but I will admit it's kind of to the latter end in my opinion. I personally feel like this game just takes other pieces of better Nintendo games without really adding anything. I consider this game to be a bizarre fusion of Super Mario Bros., Zelda, and Metroid, which makes sense because they all came out before Kid Icarus, and they have features which are all replicated in a worse way by this game. It kind of feels like a hodgepodge of different ideas and genres. It starts out as a vertical platformer, then it becomes a dungeon crawler, then it becomes a horizontal platformer, then at the end it very briefly becomes a shoot 'em up. To be fair, I can definitely appreciate the ambition here. It does a lot of things. My problem is that it doesn't do anything particularly well. It's a little too varied if you ask me, because there isn't really a core style of gameplay to get used to. I mean, I guess the vertical platforming appears the most, but it's also my least favorite part of the entire game, so that's a negative. Kid Icarus wasn't super popular, so it only ever got 2 sequels on handhelds. This means that Pikmin and Chibi Robo have more games than Kid Icarus as a series. As you can tell from that, this series has never been a big priority, and it's insane that it has 3 Smash characters. I don't think it's an exaggeration to say that if the creator of Smash Bros. Didn't direct Kid Icarus Uprising, no one would ever hear about this series now. I think it's only fair that I go level by level and examine what I don't like about it, while also giving it credit for some good stuff it does, because there's a lot to respect and appreciate here. There is one thing that I feel like I should mention to be transparent, and that's that for some reason my emulator seems to have slowed this game down permanently. I mean, I think that's what's happening anyway, I'm not sure. For whatever reason, the music is lower pitched than normal, and also everything moves a tiny bit slower. I've played at least 60 other NES games on this emulator, and I've never seen this before. I've tried resetting my computer and deleting the game and downloading it from different websites. But yeah, I played the entire game with the music slightly lower than it should have been. Gameplay-wise, it really feels exactly the same, but I don't know, this is just really weird to me, and I've never seen anything like it before. Anyway, starting the game, we're introduced to a very nice looking title screen. 2 weird things I noticed, the first being that the game doesn't actually start on the title screen, it starts on a black screen with the words push start button on it. These 2 screens just loop forever, there isn't an opening crawl like in Zelda or Metroid. What's weird about this is that there's a very long song that plays on the title that seems like it was designed to have an opening crawl alongside it. It's a nice song, I liked listening to it, but what's the point of it? This just seems like a waste of effort. Anyway, after waiting a minute and a half for the title music to end, I finally get into the game. In this game, you play as Pit, an angel who can't fly, because of course he can't. What, did you expect this game to make sense? It was made by Nintendo, come on. And yes, his name is Pit, it's not Kid Icarus. It's called Kid Icarus because Pit was inspired by the Greek myth of Daedalus and Icarus, yes. But that doesn't mean that Pit is Icarus. It's not like everyone calls Frankenstein modern Prometheus. Pit is named Pit in the same way that Link is Link and Samus is Samus. Anyway, this game has 13 levels in total. The first 12 of these are broken up into 3 worlds with 4 levels each. The first and third worlds are vertical platforming sections, the second world is a horizontal platforming section, and at the end of each world is a fortress that's very similar to a Zelda dungeon. I've played this game a lot before, and I've never managed to get past the first level. I initially thought that that was a sign that this is one of the hardest games ever created. What it actually means is that the first level is the hardest level in the entire game by a huge margin. When you start playing, you'll notice that the controls are fairly standard for an NES game made by Nintendo themselves. A to jump, B to shoot, you can jump to the sides and straight up if you hold up on the D-pad. The first annoying thing I noticed is that you can't jump while holding up and shooting. If you want to shoot up while you're in the air, then you have to jump without holding up and then hold up in mid-air. It's not a game-breaking issue, but it is a minor annoyance, and this game is pretty much nothing but minor annoyances the entire way through. If you hit start, then you get a menu that feels very inspired by Zelda, and it's it's not a bad menu at all. When you first start out, you don't really have context for anything on the menu, but I'll get into it later. Every enemy that you kill drops hearts, which is the currency for some reason. The easiest enemies drop a tiny heart, which only gives you 1. Mid-tier enemies drop half a heart, which gives you 5. And the biggest, toughest enemies drop a big full heart, which gives you 10 hearts. Throughout the level, there are these rooms to the side, and minor annoyance number 2, once you leave one, you can't go back in. It's not that big a deal since you don't really have a reason to go back in, but if you leave by accident, tough luck, buddy. After going a bit further, we end up meeting our first swarm of the game. I actually really enjoy fighting the swarms of enemies. Their pattern is pretty predictable, which is nice because it makes it a lot easier and more fun. A little farther on, we find a harp that turns enemies into hammers, which are completely useless at this stage of the game. After that, we're met with our first splitting path. To get from side to side of the stage, you use wraparound teleportation like in Pac-Man. I ended up choosing the correct path on my first try, which is easier and also leads me to a room with a bunch of easy enemies that drop 10 hearts at once. Said enemies appear to be Groucho glasses with nose hair, which is kinda gross and doesn't make any sense for the Greek mythological setting, but whatever. Continuing upwards, we meet our first Reaper of the game. If you get spotted by one of them, they'll do this weird dance and summon Re-Pets. They also have their own music that plays whenever they spot you, which I'm a huge fan of. That's cool. I'm kinda split on the Reapers since I enjoy the mechanics of fighting them, but they also take 10 hits to kill before you upgrade your bow. And on top of that, I'm pretty sure they're completely invincible when they're dancing. That's maybe not the case, but I feel like I usually shoot them way more than 10 times. Anyway, the room right next to the Reaper is a gambling room. You shoot one of the pots and it gives you a random prize. I'm personally of the opinion that because of the risk of meeting the god of poverty and losing all of your treasure, these rooms are simply not worth it. Anyway, after that, I run into what might be the hardest part of the entire game, with that being this platforming section. My biggest complaint about these vertical levels is that the screen can only scroll up and not down. If you go to the bottom of the screen, like by missing a jump, then you die, and you go back to the very beginning of the level. There's no checkpoints. Anyway, after that platforming section comes 2 Reapers in a row, which is more so just annoying than actually hard. And then after that, I get shot and I die. Meaning that everything I just did, that entire long, arduous process, that was all for nothing now. They give you a password, which in this is called Sacred Words. Haha, that's very cute. But I honestly have no idea why they bother giving you a password on the first level after you die. There's no new data here, and it's exactly the same as just resetting the game. Dying unfortunately gets rid of all of your hearts and score that you collected in the level. Luckily though, on later levels, you get to keep everything you had going into it. So if you finish level 1 with like 10,000 points and 100 hearts, then you'll keep those points and hearts every single time you restart level 2. Anyway, after going through the entire level a second time, I make it to the very top and find that the end of the level was only like 5 blocks above where I died. After that, I go to an end screen where my score gets added to my total score. I didn't know it yet, but certain milestones of your total score increase your health bar. For the first level though, because you can't get points before it, you're stuck with 1 container of life, which is exactly why it's the hardest level in the game. The second level introduces ice platforms for me to walk on. I love ice, woohoo! Hey, wait a minute. Continually jumping upwards? Ice platforms? A wraparound screen? Kid Icarus is a sister game to Ice Climber, not to Metroid. It plays just like Ice Climber, except with better music and slightly less annoying controls. After going a bit farther, I find my first store of the game. All 3 of the items he's selling catch my eye, but especially the barrel for 500 hearts. If you buy the barrel, that means you can carry 8 waters of life when you can normally only carry 1. If you have a bottle of water when you die, then it'll refill 1 gauge of your life. Meaning if I buy the barrel, I can theoretically make my health bar 9 times bigger. Because I have no idea how common the barrel is going to be, I decide to go back to the first level and grind for more hearts. On my first attempt, it seems to be a great idea since I had way more hearts at that point, but then I died. I realized that if I need a good amount of hearts, I'm going to have to grind for them, and I decide to do so just past that jumping section I mentioned earlier. Because this game is a jerk, it decides to spawn a Reaper where it will will fall through the floor and force me to fight it in a much more dangerous area. By some miracle, I actually managed to beat it, and then I beat the Reaper right after it with relatively few difficulties. And after all that effort, I end up dying on the grind trying to shoot these fire things. Later on, I tried doing exactly the same thing, but then I got tired, so I decided to just finish the level normally, and I died then as well. I then die about halfway up, and I would like to remind you that each attempt that I'm describing took at least 5 minutes, and most of them took longer than that. 2 attempts later, I finally make it up with 286 hearts, which I consider to be enough for now. I make it through level 2 and buy the barrel, only to realize that that barrel is completely empty and it's not going to help me at all with the rest of the level. Later on, I find another store that can sell me a bottle. Unfortunately, I don't have anywhere near enough hearts, so I decide to just try to go through the rest of the level anyway. That decision lasts for all of about 2 minutes before I get overwhelmed and decide, yeah, I really need a bottle. So hoping that the third time's a charm, I go back to the first level again. On my third attempt of this third attempt, I grind out 391 hearts, which I think will be enough. More importantly though, I got 20,000 points, which means that my life gets upgraded. That was a very pleasant surprise, since the manual said you could upgrade the life gauge up to 5 bars, but it gave no indication for how to do that, which is a pretty big problem if you ask me. Anyway, now that I've doubled my health bar, the stage is a lot easier. I end up having 100 more hearts than I did the first time I got the barrel, and even though I die on my first attempt, I'm pleasantly surprised to learn that I respawn with 2 bars. It turns out that I did not get enough hearts for an extra bottle, but it doesn't matter since I have double the health anyway. And after that, I end up accidentally slipping on ice and dying, and going back to the very beginning. I really love this whole vertical scrolling thing, it's so great. I do have to ask, what idiot thought that making the bottom of the screen kill you when you have wings was a good idea? That feather from the shops will let you fly away from the bottom of the screen if you fall down by accident, but shouldn't I fly away from them anyway? I don't get it. I mean, why couldn't you just make the screen scroll both up and down? This game came out after Metroid, and Metroid lets you scroll up and down. And don't you dare tell me that there wasn't enough space on the cartridge, because Metroid is way bigger than this game. I really feel like it's a huge insult to Metroid to call it a sister series to Kid Icarus. Just about every single thing that this game does, Metroid does it 10 times better. From the vertical scrolling, to the combat, to the weapons, to even the music, although the music is really good. And especially the visuals, I just don't really care for the way that this game looks. I like the character designs and the sprite work, especially the enemies. I think they're pretty cool. But when I think of Greek mythology, I don't think of ice platforms in the underworld, or purple and orange and green, and just all sorts of weird colors that don't mesh together well at all. There are the pillars, but that's pretty much it. The entire map of Metroid feels like a very cohesive, unique, and alien landscape. This game's maps just feel like a bunch of random stuff they threw together because they didn't know what to do here. Later in level 2, we're introduced to moving platforms, yet another connection this game has to Ice Climber. I keep going and find these octopus things that jump out from the bottom of the screen and will jump to attack you. I actually kinda like them if I'm being honest. They're nothing crazy, but they're actually pretty fun to fight and I like their moveset. Just before the end of the level, I find another door that takes me to a room where a guy gives me an arrow upgrade. This upgrade makes my arrows do 2 damage, and I can max that out at 5, but in this playthrough I only made it up to 3. The upgrades change the color of your arrow, and because they use the same palette as Pit Sprite itself, he also changes color, which is kind of funny. As a result of the upgrade, the Reaper at the door only takes 5 shots to kill. On to level 3 now, and apparently this level's color palette is Mardi Gras themed. This level took 17 minutes to beat, and as a testament to how much easier this game gets, I didn't die a single time in this one. For some reason, this level is filled with candle things for decoration. I mean, I can understand braziers or torches, but why candles? Why not something Greek? I mean, the ancient Greeks used olive oil lamps. Why couldn't you have put that there? Hey, you know how I said I didn't die on this level? Well, I lied actually, because there was a fire thing that shot a bullet at me and I tried to crouch under it only to realize that crouching on platforms will make you fall through them. Are you kidding me? You put an enemy that you have to crouch to fight efficiently on a platform where if you crouch you fall through and die? I'm convinced that whoever designed this game actively wanted people to hate it. I know it sounds from how I'm talking like I hate this game and that I think it's the worst thing ever, but I don't hate this game. I just don't like it. The groundwork for an amazing game is here, but the thing is, there are just dozens of little problems that could have been fixed so easily that ruin the entire thing. Why is every stage so insanely long? Why can't I re-enter a room that I've left? Why does the bottom of the screen kill me? Why couldn't the screen scroll both ways? I'll give the excuse to Super Mario Bros., but not to this game. Afterwards, there's this part with the octopuses again, and that's okay, I guess. Then there are these spiky hand things that grow from the wall, and if they touch you, then they hurt you. They're not really fun or interesting to avoid, they're just kinda whatever. After 5 minutes of completely mindless climbing, I find my first training chamber. In order to get through the training, you have to avoid these tiles. They're pretty easy if you know where to stand in the room, but on my first attempt, I actually would have died if I hadn't had a water bottle. After that, I get congratulated, and I get my pick of 3 weapons. I decide to take a bow since that will let me shoot things from farther away. After what felt like an eternity of climbing, even though it only took 30 seconds, I finally make it to the end of the 3rd level. I'm done with vertical stages for now, I'm so excited. And on top of that, I got another health upgrade, so that's nice. Level 4 is the game's first dungeon, and unfortunately the weapons that you collect don't have any effect here, which means I still have an extremely short range on my bow. I find this extremely annoying, because what's the point of having upgrades that don't work half the time? The dungeons of Kid Icarus are very similar to Zelda's dungeons in that they're single-screen rooms arranged in a maze. Because the map and the pieces are hard to find and cost a lot of money, I decided not to bother and to just draw my own maps. If it worked for Zelda, then it'll work for this game, I guess. I actually genuinely think my maps are way better looking and make more sense than the map in this game. Of course, I die immediately, and when I do so, I come to the unfortunate realization that I only respawn with 2 life bars. I try to pause the game and accidentally hit select, which switches to the mallet inexplicably. Select has done absolutely nothing in the rest of the game, and I'm curious as to why they only let you use the mallets in the dungeons. I get that they're only useful in the dungeons, but why not just program it so that select always switches to the mallets? It took more work to make it so that it only switches sometimes. I find a map, which currently does absolutely nothing to show me where I am because I need to buy stuff to make it work. And seeing that the dungeons are the best places to buy bottles of water since you can go in and out of shops here, I consider the pencil and the torch you have to buy to be nothing but a waste of hearts. After a bit more exploring, I realized that these statues are the centurions the manual was telling me about. The mallet is used to bring these guys back to life, and if you do that, then they'll all come to help you fight the boss of the dungeon. Then in the next room, I find 2 eggplant wizards. Yes, eggplant wizards. You heard me correctly. I did not misspeak. The eggplant wizards shoot eggplants, and if they hit you, then you get turned into an eggplant. Why eggplants? The Greeks didn't even have eggplants. They come from India. Why not have, like, olive wizards or something? Nah, never mind. Eggplants are funnier. You know what? I'm actually finding it kind of funny how inaccurate this game is to Greek mythology. After wandering around a bit more, I find a hot spring, which fills my health bar if I sit in it for long enough. After a bit more wandering, I accidentally stumble into the boss of the dungeon. The dungeon boss is Twinbellows, a 2-headed dog who's obviously a reference to Cerberus. After shooting him a couple times, I finally find out that that number next to the word boss at the bottom of the screen is its health bar. I realized early on that he's pretty easy and that he only takes about 50 shots to kill. Because I wasn't really preparing to fight him, I decided to let him kill me so that I can go to the shops and get more points and bottles. My first order of business was to find a store so that I could buy some stuff. And little did I know that I would spend the next hour grinding for points and hearts. I find a store, and because it doesn't cost that much, I decide to buy the torch. Sure enough, it shows me where I am, except that's completely useless information as it is now. Later, I find a hospital where I can get my eggplantiness cured if I ever become an eggplant. That's all words I just said. Wow, I'm sorry. Later on, because I carelessly paused without thinking in front of an eggplant wizard, I become an eggplant. Surprise, surprise. You can still move around normally as an eggplant, but you can't attack, meaning you're completely defenseless. Luckily, it's a pretty quick trip to the hospital to get my eggplantiness cured, and then I get hit with another eggplant, because of course I do. 10 minutes later, I buy the pencil and find out that it colors everything a disgusting lime green. Another 20 minutes or so went by that I honestly have absolutely nothing to say about, and I finish out my grinding session with 4 bottles of water and 124,000 points. After that, I make my way down to the boss, and yep, he is just as stupidly easy as I thought he would be. For beating him, I get a box that I can't open until I beat the next 2 dungeons. Whoopee. On a more positive note, I ended up getting so many points in that level that it took 30 seconds to count them all, no exaggeration. I ended up having so many points that I maxed out my health bar with 5 bars. I know you're probably shocked that it took me 20 minutes just to go over a third of this game, but I mean, the hard part's over, the rest of this is gonna be smooth sailing. My longbow finally works, so I can shoot things at the end of the screen now. There are these enemies that fall like boulders in Gumshoe, and that triggers my PTSD, so I feel the need to kill as many as possible. And immediately after that, I find out that there are going to be hot springs interspersed throughout all the levels from now on, meaning that this game just went from pretty easy to an absolute cakewalk. I have by far the least to say about the horizontal stages because they didn't annoy me, but at the same time they're not that great. They're very standard and generic platforming levels, but I'll take this over the vertical ones any day. It only took me an hour to get through this world compared to the 2.5 it took for me to get through World 1. I think they might actually be longer than the vertical ones, but they're not as annoying, so I don't care. A good bit into the stage, I find yet another arrow upgrade. This would end up being the last one I found. There are 2 in later levels that I didn't get because I didn't have enough skill. I looked it up later and I found out that there's a hidden skill value that determines whether or not the guy with the arrow will spawn. It's influenced by pretty much exactly the same things that score influences, so I have no idea why they bothered with this. Then in the next store, I decide to finally buy a feather. I didn't really need one for World 1, but who knows, I might be able to use it later. And after that, I find another training chamber. It's in this one that I learned that if you stand right here and just shoot to the left every now and then, you'll be fine. It's also here where I get a fireball, which gives me a second projectile that goes with my arrow. In level 2 there are these thieves that steal stuff if they touch you. This one specifically took my fireball, and because I didn't feel like going through the process of getting it back, I decided to just kill myself here. After I very carefully tiptoe around those guys, I find out that 2 is unfortunately an ice level. It's incredible to me how the first world of this game was so ridiculously unfair that the ice level is merciful and forgiving by comparison. 2-3 is a nighttime level. It went by extremely fast, and I have basically nothing to say about it. Only thing worth mentioning is that there was another training chamber, and I picked up the crystal staff. I feel similarly about the second dungeon. I just have nothing to say about it. Like, it's just a dungeon that goes on forever, and it's super repetitive and boring. This time it only took about 20 minutes before I accidentally wandered into the boss room. And that's when the only noteworthy thing of this entire world happened because my computer died. Yeah, it just died out of nowhere because I forgot to charge it, even though there was a charger like 2 feet away from me because I was lazy and I forgot to plug it in. I was 2 hours deep into a recording, so I was afraid I was gonna have to start the entire game over. Luckily I was fine, the recording saved, but wow, that really scared me. Boss is a Hydra, which is a jumping snake, I guess. This fight actually took a really long time because I had to time my shots. It really wasn't that dangerous once I figured out exactly where to stand where he couldn't hit me, but still, it was kind of boring. When I finally kill him, I get another treasure chest I can't open. Woohoo again! Immediately in level 3-1, there's a hot spring in the first store. Randomly, once I sit in the hot spring for long enough, my crystal staff activates. If I had to guess why it activated here, it's because I needed to hit a certain health threshold. World 3 is yet another vertical section, but you know what? This one's not as bad. For one, you already have feathers, and I don't know, I feel like the platforming is easier even if it is more complicated. I'm also pretty sure that the third world is supposed to represent heaven, and it's a pretty cool depiction of it, I guess. World 3-1 ended up going by without a hitch. It was super easy. Hey, wait, are those Metroids? Yeah, surprisingly enough, there are actually Metroids in this game. The manual calls it a Komodo and says that it came from a planet other than the Earth, which pretty much confirms it in my book. That's a really cool Easter egg. World 3-3 is probably the closest this game comes to actually looking like ancient Greece. It has buildings with sloped roofs that actually kind of look like ancient Greek architecture. The pillars are more present. And I don't know, the textures and the colors are kind of garish, but they kind of work. And that's World 3. That was insanely quick and easy. I have no idea why, but this game just kept getting easier and easier the more I played it. I've never seen a reverse difficulty like this. It's so bizarre. The third dungeon is pretty much exactly the same thing as the first and second one, so I'll be brief here. In fact, I'll be so brief here that I'm skipping straight to the dungeon boss. Boss number 3 is Pandora, who's just a big bubble who bounces around the screen like a DVD thing. What's the name of that thing? The logo. The logo that bounces around, and it, like, you get excited when it hits the corner or whatever, you know. Anyway, I was looking for a hospital and I ended up wandering into the boss room, meaning that I was stuck as an eggplant for my first encounter with her. I had 6 water bottles at this point, so it took a really long time for me to die here. Once I got to her properly, she was really, really easy. Her only attack is the bubbles that fly around the screen, and they are insanely easy to dodge. I only got hit once in this fight, and that's saying something because it took forever. Once you kill her, you get yet another treasure chest, except now they actually open. Now you can actually fly, which means that the last level of this game is a shoot-'em-up stage. My first impression is that visually, this is the best the game has ever been. The Venus de Milo statue appears in the background here, which is cool, I guess, and then it appears like 50 more times. The music is a slowed down version of the World 1 theme, which I think is fitting. This stage is easily my favorite part of the game, and I wish it could have been more fleshed out and lasted for longer. Because as it is, I only spent like 10 minutes doing this. This one level is more fun than the rest of the game combines to me. It's not perfect. For instance, you shoot way slower than you do on foot, but it's not unbearably slow. I mean, it's kind of a nice challenge. One thing that does kind of disappoint me is that it repeats itself. I'm guessing that this level was originally even shorter and they decided to just double it to pad it out a little bit. Anyway, after all of that, you finally come face to face with Medusa, who for some reason in this game is just a giant wall with a face. To beat her, you have to shoot her eye a set number of times, which is easier said than done. That is, until you realize that if you hang back and stay completely still and remember to shoot the snake every time, you can't take damage. But yeah, I just shot her a bunch of times, and eventually I won. Adios, Medusa. You were a pretty lame final boss, but you were still better than Ganon, so good for you, I guess. After I beat her, I finally meet Palutena, and I get the third best ending of the game. Instead of being determined by time like in Metroid, these are determined by checks. I maxed out my health bar and I got all 3 weapons, but I didn't have 999 hearts. I also didn't max out my arrow strength, so that meant I got 2 out of 4. Then the credits roll, and I am finally done. If it wasn't obvious throughout this entire video, this game let me down hard. It was a huge disappointment. I've heard so many people say it's one of the best NES games, and no, but it could have been. If it was just a little more polished and it focused on doing one style of level well instead of 4 styles of level kind of okay, then this absolutely could have been on par with Zelda and Metroid. But as it is, it's just a scatterbrained mess. As for the ranking, I am putting it between Wild Gunman and Golf. I know that seems shockingly low, but I really feel like I enjoyed every game above it way more. I mean, Wild Gunman and Hogan's Alley have way less substance, but they were more consistent and more enjoyable. I feel very let down right now. Well, that's off my shoulders now. I was kind of terrified that I would have to review this game one day, but honestly, I think it was easier than Zelda and Metroid overall. Those first two stages are absolutely brutal, but after that, there's really nothing to it. But anyway, I've really got to stop making videos this long. It's taking a toll on me. I always have fun making them, but it feels like I've just worked a 12-hour shift after I'm done. I'm gonna go do some shorter ones after this. Anyway, have a good day. Thank you for watching. Like and subscribe. Bye.